Again, mourners lined up to block them. During the confusion, a sister of the dead man fainted. She was held back into her home by Sinn Féin's Danny Morrison. When Hogan's coffin was eventually brought out of the house, it was draped in a tricolour, but there were no paramilitary trappings. And with Gerry Adams organising the cortege, the funeral eventually moved off, with mourners linking arms to make sure that the police couldn't get near the coffin. En route to the church, there were several exchanges between police and Sinn Féin leaders.
That's all right. How's the brother? Just move forward nice and easy, please. Next time, Mac and I'll call in and see you.
You're welcome.
As the cortege reached St Joseph's Church, the police were again out in strength in the graveyard. As the coffin was carried towards the door of the church, the tricolour was still on top of it. But local priests who'd administered the last rites to the two IRA men asked for it to be removed. Sinn Féin officials helped to take the flag off, and inside the church, Father Dennis McKinley told mourners the church was a holy ground and not a theatre of war. He said too many young lives had been lost, and the death of anyone was a matter of concern for everyone in the community. Later at the graveside, Gerry Adams condemned the RUC's tactics.
The RUC today were clearly seen to be the bully boys of the DUP.
An hour after Hogan's funeral, 18-year-old Declan Martin was also buried. But at the request of his family, there were absolutely no paramilitary trappings, and the RUC stayed in the background. Martin was also buried after a requiem mass in St Joseph's Church.
The United erupted in Belfast as thousands of police and...
On Sunday night, Patrick Vincent's family had asked the IRA and Sinn Féin to stay away from his funeral near Dungannon. During Mass, a priest told mourners the shootings in the precincts of a church were an obscene episode. Later, almost 1,000 people attended the funeral of Peter Clancy in Coal Island. The congregation was told no one but God should judge the dead man.
About 300 people attended the funeral of 20-year-old Patrick Vincent this morning. The security forces escorted the cortege but maintained some distance. The police had told clergymen they would be discreet because there were to be no paramilitary trappings. Patrick Vincent's mother, Rose, had made an emotional appeal to the IRA and Sinn Féin to stay away. Republican leaders respected her wishes. Mourners heard Monsignor Francis McLarnon call Sunday night's shootings an obscene episode, a battle in the precincts of a church, which had, he said, been scarred by the instruments of death. Where the killings took place, he said, accentuated what he called the unacceptability of such violence. He was asked about the Vincent family's request for the IRA to stay away.
They had no idea at all that there was any involvement with the IRA, and for that reason they did not wish to appear to have any involvement with it.
Monsignor McLarnon said the only way to achieve peace was through justice.
It is especially meant for those politicians who speak violent words and who encourage violence by the very words that they say. Words can be lethal, and words can be very powerful on young people.
A few miles away in Coal Island, the security force presence was much stronger at Peter Clancy's funeral. Scores of police officers in riot gear escorted the dead IRA man's coffin through the town. The procession of almost 1,000 mourners headed towards the Church of the Holy Family. Barely a shop was open in Coal Island. Prominent Republicans did attend, including Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin. Paramilitary trappings, such as Peter Clancy's beret and gloves, were removed from his coffin before it entered the church. During Mass, Monsignor Liam McIntaggart said no one should judge the dead IRA man. That was God's right. His message to the paramilitary leaders who, as he put it, sent Peter Clancy out to die, was, he said, the same for the soldiers who killed him, that it was not right, not just, and not moral. Afterwards, Peter Clancy was buried amid massive security in St Patrick's Cemetery at Clonoe, a few hundred yards from where he was shot dead on Sunday night.
900 pounds.
A kiss-and-tell money-grubbing bimbo whose book was intended to cause...
soldiers near Coal Island in County Tyrone on Sunday. The mother of one of them, 20-year-old Patrick Vincent, appealed to the IRA and Sinn Féin to stay away, and they did so. She claimed her son was not involved with the IRA.
Police surrounded the house of Peter Clancy in Coal Island and drew back some distance after the intervention of a local priest. Paramilitary trappings along with the tricolour and a Clonaux football team jersey covered the remains. During Requiem Mass, parish priest Monsignor Liam McIntaggart said his message to those paramilitary leaders who, he said, sent him out to die, and the security forces who shot Mr. Clancy, was that it was not right, not just and not moral. The cortege passed Coal Island RUC station, which the IRA had attacked on Sunday night, just before the four were shot dead by British soldiers. Mr. Clancy was buried at St. Patrick's Church in Clonaux, which still bore the scars of the incident in which the IRA men were killed. Earlier, at the funeral in Eden Dork of Patrick Vincent, the shootings were described as an obscene episode by the Dungannon parish priest Dean Francis McClarnon. He told hundreds of mourners it was all the more shocking to Mr. Vincent's parents, as they had no idea their son had any paramilitary connection. Mr. Vincent's mother, Rose, appealed beforehand to the IRA and Sinn Féin to stay away from the funeral, and they did so.
In Dublin, the Ballyfermot...
Kevin O'Donnell and Sean O'Farrell were shot dead by soldiers after an attack on Coal Island RUC station on Sunday night. During Mass, about 200 mourners walked out when the parish priest criticised the IRA.
The police mounted a huge security operation for the two funerals in Coal Island. Hundreds of officers were involved, and on several occasions, both on the way to the Holy Family Church and then later as the funerals proceeded to the cemetery, there was disagreement between Sinn Féin leaders and senior RUC officers. An assistant chief constable in charge of the police operation sought assurances that there would be no paramilitary show of strength. The funerals of Kevin Barry O'Donnell and Sean O'Farrell passed through the centre of Coal Island on the way to the Holy Family Church, which overlooks the RUC base that was fired on during Sunday night's IRA attack. When the two funerals met, the coffins were marched in military fashion to the church door, and at this point camera crews were ordered to stop filming. Berets and gloves were removed from the coffins, but not the tricolours, and there was a delay of about half an hour before the coffins, with flags still intact, passed into the church. Commenting on this, Dean Francis McClarnon, one of the Vicars General of the Armagh Archdiocese, said that for some time there'd been an understanding that all kinds of paramilitary trappings should be removed before a coffin enters a church. He said he was disappointed that this hadn't happened today. About 200 mourners attending the funeral walked out of the church service when Monsignor Liam McIntaggart called on Republican leaders to abandon violence and criticised those who'd ordered Sunday's IRA attack on the Coal Island RUC base. There was also criticism of the soldiers involved in the shooting, who he said had acted in an unacceptable way. This afternoon, O'Donnell and O'Farrell were buried in a Republican plot at a nearby cemetery, where the oration was given by Sinn Féin's Martin McGuinness.
The funeral has altered.
He also condemned the soldiers who shot Kevin Barry O'Donnell and Sean O'Farrell for unacceptable standards of behaviour.
Surrounded by a vast security operation, arguments and delays marked the start of Kevin Barry O'Donnell's funeral procession on its way to Coal Island. His IRA, beret, gloves and belt were laid on the coffin, but police objected to what is known as a colour party, pallbearers wearing black leather jackets. The cortege stopped and started as Sinn Féin negotiated with the police about the distance the security forces should keep from mourners. O'Donnell's coffin passed the police station he and others had riddled with bullets on Sunday night, an attack which led to their deaths in an ambush by the British Army. Hundreds of people crowded the streets as O'Donnell's funeral cortege merged with that of his terrorist partner Sean O'Farrell. The leather-jacketed pallbearers marched with the two coffins. Then there was another argument, this time with a Roman Catholic priest. After 20 minutes, he eventually agreed to let the coffins into the church, draped only with the flags, but this is against Catholic Church regulations. Men at the funeral prevented cameramen from filming. Before the coffins emerged, more than 60 people had walked out of the church after the priest had said that paramilitary leaders who sent 4 men to their deaths should think again about the use of violence. But he had also accused the army of improper procedure in killing the 4 men.
With tricolours, although the parish priest initially refused them entry. During Mass, about 200 mourners walked out, where the parish priest criticised the IRA. There was a heavy security force presence in the town for the joint funerals of Kevin Barry O'Donnell and Sean O'Farrell. Michael Fisher.
Police again staged a major security operation with a view to preventing any paramilitary display. They surrounded the homes of Sean O'Farrell and that of Kevin Barry O'Donnell and there were several stops as Sinn Féin officials asked the RUC to keep back